Intruder in the Dust, 1949. This is a film that, to me, has inexplicably disappeared, fallen into the cracks, has been overlooked and forgotten. And I think really it is one of the great American post-World War II films of any type, of any genre. The bookend performances of this film, as you will see, two actors. One is a Afro-Cuban actor that was born in Puerto Rico named Juan Hernandez. And the other actor is here with us today, and I can't tell you what a privilege it is to have Claude Jarman Jr. here with us today as our special guest.
What's interesting, this film was made in 1949, and 14 years later, there was this young man named James Meredith who applied for law school at the University of Mississippi. He was a black man, he was a veteran, and John F. Kennedy was the president, Bobby Kennedy was the attorney general. And it was a huge battle in Oxford, Mississippi. 3 people were killed, 300 people were hurt. It was a major, major situation that went on, and this was 15 years after this film was made.
I did read that Clarence Brown, one of the things, he was a Southerner, and he had grown up, I believe there were some race riots in Atlanta in 1913, so World War I, and he saw some truly horrible things where the people trying to break into jail actually got into jail, and he saw some really terrible things happen. So he, as I mentioned at the top, felt very strongly that this was a film that needed to be made. And I think what was really remarkable, Ralph Ellison, the great author, African-American author who wrote The Invisible Man, said at the time, he said this was the only movie where if you had black people in the audience, they did not have to explain how the character that Juan Hernandez played was either stereotypical or wrong or screwed up. I mean, he was proud and unbending and considered himself as a man. What was the relationship with Hernandez, with the crew and the cast? Because as you pointed out, this was Oxford, Mississippi in 1949, and certainly there, everybody was not equal.
I think 90% of it was made in Oxford, and it was a situation where Clarence Brown went in and filmed everything with an open camera, and we came in and dubbed the movie back in Hollywood after it was over, because he just wanted the flexibility to get in. Like the jail you saw was the jail in Oxford. Everything was, the people you saw, those were the people in Oxford. And it really was cinema verite. It really was a very, a movie I think was really ahead of its time.
Definitely.
When you say it lost money one reason, because MGM basically buried the movie.
Yeah.
They would not promote it. They never would let, I forget what their movie was, some Battleground or something they were promoting.
Yeah.
It actually won the Film Critics Award in London. Mm-hmm. So it was recognized, but they never,
they were
still basically doing Meet Me in St. Louis and doing all the musicals, and they did not want to acknowledge that there was a problem. And it was, wasn't long after that there was a real problem. So it was, and in Oxford, Juan Hernandez stayed in a family's home. He did not stay in a hotel. So even then, it just wasn't quite ready for it.
Yeah.
When you go to Oxford now, we went to Oxford, I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago when they showed the film, and a lot of the townspeople were there, including the twins.
Oh, really?
Oh my God.
They're still around?
They're still around.
Now, Porter Hall isn't around anymore.
But the twins were still there.
Where?
And in the scene when I and David Bryan are walking to the, and Mr. Willigan, whoever the guy was, was saying, you get involved with it. He was actually the mayor of Oxford.
Oh my goodness.
So the people really, at that time, participated in the film. So a lot has changed. If you go back to Oxford, believe me, a lot has changed, which is all for the better.
So basically the the small townism, for lack of a better term, that's brought out in the movie. The people in Oxford were very supportive of that.
Well, they were
Is that
obviously
that's the question?
hugely supportive of William Faulkner. I mean, he was there. He was someone that was very cherished, and he could do no wrong. And in fact, he and Clarence Brown got along very well, and Faulkner was on the set a lot of the time. And that was, in fact, that was different from when I made The Yearling, and Marjorie Kennedy Rawlings wrote the book, and Clarence Brown again was the director, and they never got along. She never came on the set. She thought the movie it was too positive. I guess Killing the Deer was too positive.
Let's talk a little bit about going backwards to The Yearling, and that term that's used in Hollywood is so-and-so was discovered, and the term discovered, but in fact, you were really discovered. Tell us how it came about, where Clarence Brown found you to star in The Yearling.
Well, I give you just a little bit of a background. The Yearling, they tried to make it in 1939, 1940, and Spencer Tracy and Victor Fleming, who had done Gone with the Wind.
Right.
And the war was coming on, and Tracy hated it, and they shut it down. And they only started to make it again in 1945, and they asked Clarence Brown, as you had said, who was their top director at MGM at that time. He just made National Velvet.
Right.
And he did not like the way they were trying to get the young boy. And he said, I'm going to go get it myself. I don't want. They were going into towns, into cities, and advertising, saying, if you have a young 10-year-old boy who wants to be in the movies, come to the hotel. And they had thousands of people. They had 20-year-olds, 5-year-olds. It was really amazing. He said, I'm not going to do it that way. So he was from the South. He'd gone to the University of Tennessee. And he had a new idea that he wanted to do this thing. He would go into a city. I think he was going to Birmingham, Memphis, Nashville, Knoxville, and Atlanta. And he would go into the Board of Education in that city and introduce himself and say, I want a letter from you that I can go into the grammar schools in your town, introduce myself to the principal, have her show me the 5th and 6th grade rooms, and if I see anybody I like, I want to talk to them. And if I don't see anybody I like, they'll never know who I was or where I'd been. And he came to my school on a Friday afternoon, Valentine's Day actually, in 1945. I was in the 5th grade, and I was standing at the board doing something, and he said, I want to talk to him. And he talked, sent me to the office, and he was there with his assistant. And he just said, just chatting with me, what do you do? What do you like to do? Where do you want to go to school? I had done some theater work, but mostly, obviously not Hollywood type. And he said, well, we're going to come out and see you later on in the day. We'll try to come out to your house later in the afternoon. So I can go and tell my mother, I said, these strange guys, they want to come out and see me. And my sister came and she said, oh, don't pay attention to them. They were building inspectors. They came into my room too. So I left, went out to play. They came over and my mother said, he's gone, he's not here. So then they left, they called back and said, can you get him home? And so she called me home, and then I met with them. And then they told me, they said, are you familiar with The Yearling? No, not really, had never read it. And so we're interested in, would you be interested in being in the picture? And I said, yeah, I guess. And they said, well, we'll call you again or something. And then the next day, it started snowing, so they couldn't leave Nashville. And they called and said, can you send your son down to the hotel? We want to talk to him. And my father was working downtown, so he joined me, and then we spent the afternoon with them. And they said, well, we're leaving, we're going to Knoxville tomorrow, and we'll probably get back to you. And we thought, sure. Don't call us, we'll call you.
Yeah.
And the next thing they called 3 days later and said, be ready to leave for Hollywood in a week.
Wow.
So.
How did your parents react?
Well, my father was working, and we thought, well, he'll take a 2-week vacation and go to California. I mean, God, why not? And we did, and after 2 weeks, nothing happened. I was going to school. I was in the MGM school. I was in the school with Margaret O'Brien, Elizabeth Taylor, Jane Powell.
Well, that certainly was different than Knoxville.
And we kept waiting for nothing to happen. And then I got a test, and I got tested. And then I got...
Were you on salary while all this was
No,
going
I
on?
didn't think I was getting anything.
Right.
I had been getting something.
Yeah.
We didn't have any money. So anyway, I ended up testing with people to play the role of the mother. I did make tests with 3 different people. And then finally he told my father, this is my decision, quit your job. You gotta go with us on this thing. So we went to Florida in April, and it took almost 2 years to make that movie. By the time we got here, yeah. I was 10 when I started, 12 when it came out.
How did they deal with the age over time? Did they have to do anything to compensate for you, or did you grow that much from 10 to 12?
They said it did a hole every now and then.
So here you were, a youngster with Gregory Peck and Jane Wyman. How did they treat you as a neophyte in this big movie?
Well, most of my dealing was with Gregory Peck, and
Right.
he was absolutely fabulous. He had really sort of started his career. He
Yeah.
made Kings of the Kingdom, and he just made Jewel in the Sun, which had not come out yet. But he was very, very patient dealing with me, but also dealing with animals, which was unbelievably difficult because it's very hard to, you can't train a deer. You just have to keep doing something over and over until
Until
the
you
deer
get what you want.
does what you want. And
Yeah.
normally, later when I made other films, if you took a shot more than 5 or 6 times, that's a lot. But there were times in the Yearling when we would do, I think the most we ever had a shot was 115 times.
Oh my God.
115 takes.
Because the deer wouldn't follow. So finally, the deer finally followed, and you had to be perfect because you couldn't screw it up.
Yeah, the deer was the one that was in charge.
But that to me was a lot of work. In Truman, that was a lot of fun.